This is Prop Point on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome, everybody, to Prop Points. Jeff Erickson here with Nick Whalen. We got a big show coming up for you today. We are going to get you live baseball updates. We're going to talk best bets for the Masters. We got Sean Jacques later on to talk Masters as well. We're going to take a look at tonight's NBA slate, maybe tell you a few things that happened last night. Some things may or may not have happened in the NBA. There's never any shortage of drama. And then, of course, we'll preview the rest of today's baseball slate as well. Quickly, though, Nick, we got a no-hitter working in the Pirates and Cardinals game. They're in the seventh inning of this one. Game's flying by. I guess that's what happens when there's no scoring.
Yeah, well, we got 3 games active right now, and Rangers Cubs is about to start up in 20 minutes or so. That'll be Tyler Mahle going up against Shota Imanaga. And yeah, we're putting the show together, and I'm like, all right, nice. We'll have 3 games. We could check in. We could tell everybody what's going on. There's nothing going on. It's 0-0 across the board, but there is a no-hitter. Like you said, Eric Fetty is through 6 innings, has issued 4 walks, only has 2 strikeouts. So he is at 88 pitches, Jeff. Will be interesting to see, how long they allow him to remain in the game. But we're in the top of the 7th in that one right now in Pittsburgh. Nobody on and 2 outs. So in all likelihood, we'll still be scoreless as we get down to the Pittsburgh Pirates working through that order again. But yeah, that's the most exciting thing going on in baseball right now. No question.
Yeah. And Yankees, Tigers, a little known fact. No one's ever mentioned this before, but we've got the Harvard Westlake battle between Max Fried and Jack Flaherty. They're scoreless through 3, and there's a lot of strikeouts in that game so far. Max Fried with 4 Ks through 3. Yeah. Flaherty with 7 Ks through 3 on that one there. It's funny. I've already seen the graphic like 4 times in that game. Like all the other, Lucas Giolito also happened to go to the same high school. Bryce Rainier, also a Tigers prospect drafted last year from the same high school. I know that high school pretty well. It is a powerhouse. Yeah, so this is what kind of a Kershaw, Matthew Stafford situation, I suppose. Yeah, we've only heard about that, 50 to 75 times over the years. Live totals in those games, by the way, which are all still at 0-0, 2.5 in Cardinals Pirates, 4.5 for Marlins Mets, and Yankees Tigers. Like you said, plenty of strikeouts so far in that Detroit New York game. 11 total, 7 of those to Jack Flaherty, who's working on a really nice outing. Just 1 hit so far. Indeed. One other baseball note before we hit up our Masters best bets. Yesterday, Cardinals and Pirates. The Pirates, they have Paul Skeens. He's amazing. The Cardinals always seem to get the better of them. They did again last night. Sonny Gray outduels Paul Skeens.
Yeah, it's kind of news now, Jeff, even though Paul Skeens is in like his first actual MLB season. It's news when he doesn't have an immaculate outing, right? And this wasn't a total blow up by any means. There were 2 or 3 pitchers who had significantly worse days last night than Paul Skeens did, but 5 earned runs on 6 hits, did issue just 1 walk, 7 strikeouts, so it wasn't a total blow up from a fantasy perspective, but took his first L of the season. And, I don't want to go too deep on this, but looking at it through a fantasy lens, Jeff, Paul Skeens, he was getting pushed up into the first round in a lot of drafts. And look, it has been 3 starts, but he's not faced, any high level offenses, St. Louis, Tampa Bay, Miami. Do you have a little bit of early regret? If you spent that early pick on Skeens, do you wish you would have gone hitter there? It's not like Tarek Skubal has been lighting it up either.
I don't have any Skeens this year. I play in about 14 managed leagues, and I wasn't able to roster him anywhere. So, and more often because I was indeed choosing the hitter. And there's only a couple places where, I legitimately considered it. There is either I was drafting after where he went, or I was drafting early enough that, there was always like a Gunnar Henderson or a Juan Soto that I wouldn't take Skeens over. So if I had taken it, I'd be concerned. I would have liked to have gotten a win out of one of those 3 starts for sure. But yeah, at the same time, it's not like he's killing fantasy managers, but at the same time, just like to see a little bit more there. We are going to talk a lot of golf this segment, and later on too, we got Sean Zach joining us as well. But first, the battle for the jacket is heating up in Augusta. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app to play free for a shot at the $1 million top prize with just a $10 deposit. It's simple to play. Build your dream lineup while staying under the salary cap, then sit back and watch as your players rack up points. Available for all DraftKings customers. Just download the Daily Fantasy app for your free shot today. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. Minimum $10 deposit required. One single-use $10 ticket rewarded for fantasy golf. Millionaire contest that expires on April 10th at 7 a.m. See terms at DraftKings.com/promotions. Sponsored by DraftKings. Nick, let's take a look at some of our favorite best bets for the Masters. We have a couple players in common. We both like Corey Connors, especially for maybe not necessarily to win. You like him top 10 at plus 300 at plus 330. I like him for top 20 at plus 160. So we're same ballpark there. Let's start with Corey Connors.
Yeah, I'm looking at top 10 for Corey Connors. I think you're getting a reasonable price here at plus 330 over at DraftKings. You know, you're looking for, Jeff, first and foremost, I think, golfers who are playing consistently in the weeks and even the months leading up to Augusta. And I think Corey Connors fits that bill. 24th, 3rd, 6th, 8th, 18th over his last 5 starts. Obviously, he hasn't, gotten to the mountaintop in any of those, but he's been consistent. He's making cuts. He's finishing inside the top 10. Played the Valero last week as a tune-up. A lot of guys ended up sitting out that event. Made the cut last year after missing it in 2023. And prior to that, finished top 10 in 3 straight years. And that's the other, I wouldn't quite call it a metric, but if you're looking at, things to add to your calculation when you're coming up with your card for the Masters, is you want guys who are playing consistently and playing well coming in, and you want guys who have experience at this course.
Indeed. Let's talk about another best bet that we have in common. Patrick Reed, when you identified it, he was at plus 450. The odds have actually gotten better. You can get a top 10 for Patrick Reed at plus 550 now over at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Jump in. We don't love Patrick Reed. He's not lovable. He's not cuddly, but he's creative. He's good. He's local. He just does well there. So I like the Patrick Reed top 10s, top 20 bets a lot there. Maybe even like a sprinkle to win.
He's done it before. He's won the Masters, of course, back in 2018, but he has an illustrious history at this course. Love him or hate him. And it's almost always going to be the latter, right? It almost feels like you have to say that as like a legal disclaimer when you're talking about Patrick Reed. Like, I don't like the guy, but he's got 5 top 15s. He's got 4 top 10s. He's got 2 top 5s. And of course that win in 2018. So it's one of those things where he doesn't necessarily meet some of the same trends that we talked about with Corey Connors. It's more difficult to evaluate the live guys. You're not necessarily watching them week in and week out, but he has the history to lean on here at Augusta. And it doesn't seem to matter how he's playing or what's going on in his life. He always seems to show up when he gets to Augusta National. So plus 550, you're giving me a better number on that. I liked it up plus 450. I'll lock that in. And look, if you're feeling really saucy, I don't know if I'm betting Patrick Reed to win the tournament. You can get that close to 90-1, but 11-1 for a top 5.
Yeah, exactly. I'm on board with that one there. Ludwig Åberg, tell me more.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide if I want to sprinkle on Rory or Scotty, but you want to get one of those top players in the mix, and I'm really focusing on the top 10 markets right now on the initial pass for the card, and he's at plus 150, so maybe not quite as appealing as Connors or Reed from a pricing perspective. He is coming off a miscut last week. That's a little bit scary. Struggled before that at the Players, but of course he has that win at the Genesis back in February. We know the talent level. Obviously finished solo second at Augusta just a year ago in his first start at the Masters. That is very difficult to do. We talk about wanting experience at this course, and certainly that's something that will come for him in the years preceding this. But I'm betting on the talent with Åberg. I'm betting on the result last year, the fact that he'll know this course, have a little institutional knowledge coming off of that great second place finish last year. So top 10 for Åberg, plus 150.
All right, very good. Let's go one more for Nick's best bets. Russell Henley won the API earlier this year, outdueled Colin Morikawa down the stretch. Get him at plus 300 and finish in the top 10. We like that.
Yeah, another boring, kind of top 10 bet. I don't mind a sprinkle on Henley to win the tournament. I believe when I checked yesterday, it was 55-1. You can probably find him, a little bit higher or lower depending on where you look, but I think that's a fair price. Another guy who's playing well heading into Augusta. 4 top 10 finishes already this season, 5th at Pebble, 6th at the Cognizant, won the Arnold Palmer. Again, historically, you're looking for golfers who are in prime form heading into Augusta. So Russell Henley, another direction that I'm looking if you want to stay away from some of those obvious guys at the top. Certainly like John Rahm, too. If I have to pick a live guy, you're looking at Rahm at 13-1 to win this tournament. I know you're taking a look at Cam Smith as well, Jeff. So tell me about him.
Well, Cam Smith has got the best short game, maybe in all of golf. And you need that touch around the greens at Augusta. We had Len Hochberg on yesterday extolling his virtues. Really like the DraftKings price there, by the way, at 8,200 when you're building a lineup there. You need those solid mid-tier players that can be a top 10, top 5 type of player. I really like Cam Smith's chances as far as that goes. He's definitely one of the guys I'm in on there. I'm also in on Robert McIntyre. I like his current form. I like the fact that he's like one down the stretch in a big tournament. I like lefties at Augusta. I like the price too. At 60-1, I'm sprinkling in a win bet there. I think he's got the upside, the game to not just contend, but he could be a type of guy that could win there. So I like him. And one more I'll throw in that I like is Daniel Berger. I like his recent form, including tied for second in Phoenix, 12th in the Genesis. He's been top 30 in his or better in the last 6 outings for him and 7 out of the last 8. So I'm on board with him. I like the Daniel Berger bets. I like top 20 at plus 250. I like some of his top 10s as well. So those are some of my favorite Masters bets. We're going to be talking a little bit more Masters later in the show. Sean Zach's going to join us on the Progressive Guest Line in about 15 minutes. But first, little NBA talk coming up next on Prop Points.
Watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back to Prop Points. Jeff Erickson and Nick Whalen from RotoWire, and we are happy to be talking a little NBA right now. Busy slate. Yesterday was a very active day. Big win by the Bucks over the Timberwolves. Big for both the Bucks and maybe even bigger, Nick, for the Timberwolves losing with such a logjam in the West.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually a pretty exciting slate last night. You go into this final week of the season and you feel like you might have a lot of throwaway games. And yeah, there were a couple of those. You got the Hornets laying down for the Grizzlies, the Bulls resting a lot of their regulars, going up against the Cavs. Pacers actually struggled a little bit with what remains of the Wizards. But yeah, that Milwaukee-Minnesota game ended up being incredible. And, Milwaukee falls down by 20 plus. They're trailing by, I think it was exactly 20 going into the fourth, and ended up closing on an incredible run. I mean, outscored Minnesota 40-13 in the fourth quarter alone. And, one thing that really jumped out to me, Jeff, is Doc Rivers stuck with essentially a bench unit plus Giannis for the entirety of that fourth quarter, the entirety of that comeback. It was Giannis, Bobby Portis, who made his return from the PED suspension, Gary Trent Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., and AJ Green that closed this thing out for Milwaukee. Kyle Kuzma, Brook Lopez, Taurean Prince spent the entire fourth quarter on the bench. And this is the second kind of wild game that we'd seen between Milwaukee and Minnesota this season. They played another crazy one that Milwaukee won at the end just before the NBA All-Star break. But huge win for Milwaukee, gives them a little bit of a cushion. They do play Detroit the final 2 games of the season. They'll just essentially need to win one of those 2, assuming they take care of business against a tanking Pelicans team tomorrow night. But huge for Minnesota. Huge loss for Minnesota. I mean, you could tell this team thought they had that game sewn up. And now you look at the Western Conference standings, Jeff, which are going to change on a night-to-night basis until we get to Sunday. Minnesota is your 8th seed all of a sudden out west.
Yeah, massive. And they've been kind of up and down as far as that goes. And it just shows how volatile the West really, truly is. Speaking of which, we got a pretty big game tonight. Number of them. Nuggets Kings. First game after the Malone firing for the Nuggets. I mean, they've lost 4 in a row. Jamal Murray out in this game. Kings, I mean, they've locked in a play-in spot. I mean, courtesy of the Phoenix Suns and their utter collapse, but still pretty big game for Denver.
Yeah, and it's still somewhat of a big game for Sacramento. They are locked into the play-in. They will be the 9 or the 10, but they could still get passed up by the Dallas Mavericks, who, of course, host the LA Lakers tonight. We'll talk about that momentarily. But Sacramento's only up one game on Dallas. They can't get the 7 or the 8 in the play-in, but it still matters. You want to host that 9-10 game if you have the option. So I don't expect Sacramento to be laying down here. Like you said, no Jamal Murray. And yeah, that's a concern for this game specifically. It's becoming maybe more of a concern because we are, less than essentially a week away from the play-in tournament starting, and Denver could very well be in that. Before Michael Malone was let go yesterday, in his final presser, essentially as the Nuggets head coach, he kind of said, yeah, we're hoping Jamal will be back by the playoffs. And I don't think anybody really thought it was that serious of an injury. So that is something to monitor big time as the playoffs approach. I would like to think, Jeff, that this is a Denver Nuggets spot. They're 4-point favorites, but who knows which direction this goes post-coach firing, right? Do you get the bump? Do you not get the bump? Sacramento still has plenty to play for. To me, it's maybe more of an under spot. I'm looking at 234.5 at this total. Yeah, both these teams are bad defensively, but neither team plays all that fast. Again, no Jamal Murray, no Malik Monk on the Sacramento side of things. Keegan Murray is also questionable. He's their best and most consistent three-point shooter. So I would lean under. If you're looking for a prop in this game, Christian Brown is where I am looking here. Over 15.5 points, minus 125 at DK. He's gone over this number in 6 straight. He's playing a ton of minutes right now for this Nuggets team. That should continue with no Jamal Murray out there tonight. And if you are curious, a Nikola Jokic triple-double, minus 110. Minus 110, which feels pretty fair to me for a guy averaging 31, 13, and just over 10 assists over his last 20 games.
That's the confounding thing about Denver is that Jokic has been so amazing down this stretch, and yet their team results have been so mediocre. Lakers, Mavs, huge return game for Luka after he got kicked out last night. A very weird setup here. Dallas trying to profit off of Luka's return. Luka's people saying like, no thanks, play for the Lakers now. Wild game, and it's an important game for the Lakers and for the Mavs. Yeah,
the Mavs are not technically locked into the play-in tournament. Now, they would have to essentially lose out. Phoenix would have to win out, which probably won't happen. So they could feel pretty good about getting the 9 or the 10. But you don't want to bring this down to game 82, right? If you have the option to just end it now, you do it. So Dallas should be out there in full force tonight. In terms of the environment, Jeff, I mean, this might be a one-of-a-kind situation, right? We've obviously had plenty of big name players switch teams and then return to play in their old arena, but usually it's either a welcomed return. You think of someone like Klay Thompson, playing his first game back in Golden State. It's kind of a mutual parting of ways. The complete other side of the spectrum is LeBron going back to Cleveland after he signed with the Miami Heat. Like, I don't really know where this one fits in. Like the Mavericks are giving out shirts to every fan in the arena tonight that say, thanks for everything in Slovenian. So you're welcoming a guy back. You're essentially kind of encouraging your own fans to cheer for a player who's now on the other team in a game that you really want to win. The Mavericks are still competitive enough. They will likely be a playoff team that it's not like this is just going to be a full-on Luka love fest. If you're a Mavs fan, you're still a Mavericks fan first before you are a Luka Doncic fan. So I don't really know what to expect here. It's going to be very strange. I'm very much looking forward to watching it on television tonight. And like you said, Luka is coming off of an ejection last night against the OKC Thunder, and that ejection completely swung that game. The Lakers were leading by 1 when Luka got tossed, and the Thunder, I believe it was, closed on a 27-12 run after Luka was ejected. So kind of a strange set of circumstances overall. Even with the Lakers, going for it against OKC last night, ended up coming up short. I think this is still a Lakers spot for me. They've actually been a very good back-to-back cover team throughout the season. Anthony Davis will be out there for the Mavericks, but I don't think he's at 100%, Jeff. He's battling through a couple injuries. We saw him, kind of favoring that groin, abdomen area over the weekend. So I'm not sure he's going to be, peak Anthony Davis. Talked about Nikola Jokic triple-double, Jeff. I don't want to lean too hard into the narrative here. Luka does only have 2 triple-doubles in a Lakers uniform, but 3-1 tonight at the DraftKings Sportsbook. We know Luka Doncic cares about sticking it to the Dallas Mavericks. Points prop for Luka is all the way up at 31.5. That's a little high to me. I'd rather go over on 3.5 threes. If you're looking for a prop there, he's taking over 10 threes per game over his last 20. He's gone over that number in 6 of his last 10. One more prop I like in this game, Austin Reeves, over 24.5 points plus assists. Continues to be arguably the best third option in the entire Western Conference. He's gone over that number in 12 of his last 15. And honestly, Jeff, I mean, that could be his points prop, and it wouldn't be that crazy. I mean, he's a threat to go over 24.5 points on any given night.
Yeah. A Luka, I'd be curious to explore like a Luka tech prop also of some sort there, especially if Nico's in the building. I
think the number's at 1.5.
Yeah. We're going to explore a couple more games tonight, but first, looking to stay ahead of the game, RotoWire has you covered with expert analysis, real-time updates, and the best fantasy and betting tools in the industry. Whether you're making picks, setting your fantasy lineup, or placing bets, our award-winning insights give you the edge you need. Get started today by heading over to rotowire.com and entering Roto15 at checkout for 15% off any RotoWire product. All right, we've talked about those two big games in the West. Let's talk about another one. Rockets, Clippers. This one's a really interesting one. Two teams kind of pretty close to the peak of their powers.
Yeah, the Clippers rested Kawhi Leonard last night on the front end of a back-to-back. Still were able to win that game against San Antonio. They're now 8-point favorites. Şengün, Van Vliet, Jabari Smith, all questionable. The Rockets have locked up the 2 seed in the Western Conference, so they have nothing to play for here. I would expect at least one, maybe two, maybe all three of those names that I just mentioned to rest tonight. I think this is a Clipper spot for me. Kawhi Leonard should be back tonight. I think they were just playing it safe on the front end of the back-to-back and what was still a very winnable game. I think this could also be a lower scoring game, especially if Houston is missing some of those pieces. Totals at 218.5. So I would look at the under there. And then, when it comes to the props, Jeff, I feel like I give these out anytime we talk Clippers. Kawhi points over 22.5, Harden over 8.5 assists. Just meat and potatoes props. You just got to put your head down, run the ball, pick up 3 yards, win the bet, and move on.
The Patrick Reed of props. Right there is the way I'd look at that there. Don't love it, but you got to do it. Thunder, Suns. Oh my God, the Suns. They got eclipsed. There is no more sun in Phoenix. It is a cold, desolate place now. They don't even try anymore.
We love the Warriors at 9.5 yesterday, Jeff. Turned out that number could have been like 35.5 and we would have been fine. But my goodness, man, they just completely laid down. Not that we should be surprised at this point. I mean, they have now lost 7 in a row straight up. They failed to cover 8 in a row. All of those 7 losses have come by double digits. We could see OKC rest some guys here on the back-to-back. Obviously, they have the number 1 seed locked up. So in this game, I'm just looking at the Suns team total. I'm looking at the under 108.5, especially if Kevin Durant sits. They've gone well under that number now in 3 straight. And during that 7-game skid, they've only scored more than 109 points one time. So under 108.5 on the Suns team total. Yeah,
I think Phoenix is going to be playing this game live from Cancun. Of course, they've been doing that for about 2 months now. So quickly, about 50 seconds. You got like anything in Boston, Orlando?
Franz Wagner, over 4.5 assists. He's gone over in 4 straight. He's averaging 5.5 assists over his last 10. Celtics arrested a bunch of dudes tonight, so give me Wagner over 4.5 assists.
Sean Zock, join us on the Progressive Guest Line. Coming up next, Talking Masters on Prop Points.
You're watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back to Prop Points here on VSiN. Nick Whalen, Jeff Erickson hanging out with you for another 30 minutes. We'll talk a little Masters. We are under 24 hours away from the first round getting underway down in Augusta, Georgia on Thursday morning. And to help us preview it all, give us some of his best bets, it's Sean Zock joining us on the Progressive Guest Line, writer over at golf.com. Sean, welcome back to the program, man. It's been too long. I was hanging out with you in Dallas this past weekend. You did shoot a 78 on Saturday, despite battling a highly publicized wrist injury. So, I mean, everything really seems to be coming together with your game, Sean. But, one thing I think every amateur thinks about when they're watching the Masters is like, yeah, could I handle this course? Could I go out there and maybe shoot a 95? What number realistically do you think you could shoot at Augusta National as somebody who's been on the grounds, who's been there multiple times and gotten to see it up close?
Well, the only answer to that is like, are we playing from the tips or from the member tees? Because the member tees are like 6,200 yards. And from there, 80 seems like pretty reasonable. If you go back to the tips, I am not breaking 100, not in tournament conditions, not even in fair conditions. It is just so long. You're hitting a lot of woods into par 4s at that point. And, there's a reason I'm not playing this week and I'm down here to cover it because my game is not near the standard it takes out here.
Yeah, and
so you arrived in Augusta, or go ahead, Jeff.
No, go for it. Go ahead.
So you arrived in Augusta on Monday night, Sean, late Monday. I want to ask you from a journalistic perspective, again, just want to be clear, you're not there to play the Masters. What does a Tuesday and a Wednesday at Augusta look like in the life of Sean Zog? What stories are you chasing? Who are you trying to see? What are you trying to glean before we get to Thursday morning?
Yeah, both those days are very different. Tuesday is filled with press conferences. I think a lot of people compare it to Super Bowl media day, where you basically have Rory at 9:30 a.m., John Rahm immediately after him, Victor Hovland, the Højgaard twins, Ludwig Aberg, down the line. Like the entire day of Tuesday is just press conference, press conference, press conference. And what's nice about that is you can ask the same question over and over and kind of get an idea of how these guys are perceiving the golf course, the shape of it, and kind of understanding how it's going to play. So Tuesday is when you really learn things. Wednesday is just a happy-go-lucky day. It is beautiful. I'm watching a bunch of guys just play a par 3 contest, giving their kids opportunities to hit putts, dipping their toes in the water hazards. They're running around the bunkers. Like Wednesday is the happiest day in golf annually. It feels kind of meaningless, honestly, but I know it puts a lot of these guys in a good mental headspace, and so sometimes that's what it takes.
The only day I've ever spent on the course was a Wednesday, and you see the guys like trying to skip the ball off the water onto the green on 16. You got the par 3 contest. I think it was Jordan and Ricky and just JT were playing as a group one time, and they played this game where you weren't allowed to mark the ball, or you had to try to get it in, like hop over someone else's ball to try to putt it in and things like that. It's a lot of fun. And the par 3, the par 3 course is beautiful. People don't realize how amazing that little mini course is.
Well, it's all in this little valley. And so like, it feels like the roars from Aces, which happen to be on like funnel pins. They just happen like every 15 minutes and they just kind of explode that little corner of the property, which is funny because it has gravity and it pulls all the fans to that little area of the property. And then there are people who are not playing in the par 3 contest that are enjoying the most lovely walk. They're out on the 5th hole, thousands of yards from the par 3 contest. They're just getting their last like most calm 3 p.m. practice in. That actually might be the real treat of Wednesday at the Masters.
All right, Sean, let's get down to brass tacks here. Talk about some golfers that you will be keeping a close eye on this week. And, we talked with our expert Len Hochberg yesterday a little bit about John Rahm. He is the shortest odds of any live player in the field, 13-1 to win the tournament. What kind of chances do you give John Rahm to come through?
I mean, this guy was the defending champ last year. This is a guy who's won here before. And that victory in 2023, he was building to it that year, but he was also like building to it year after year after year. They say you have to probably lose a Masters in order to win one, which I think we've seen over the years. Like guys have to get into contention first, and then they have to finish in the top 15 first. And then they have to kind of like have their heart broken in order to actually punch their green jacket ticket. And Rahm did all those things. And so I think for the rest of his prime, the next 10 years, he's going to be one of the 5 favorites at this golf course. His game, so long as he's not injured, which he's not, he's just going to fit what this golf course asks. He's a great putter. He's a great chipper, and he's one of the best ball strikers on the planet. And I don't like to like reduce what is ultimately a point in time at a particular golf course down to something as simple as that. But he's a major champion. He's won here. He's won a U.S. Open. He just has to be in that top 5 group. And I guess what's interesting about him is he wasn't necessarily in that top 5 group like 2 weeks ago. But this is a guy who has never once finished outside the top 10 in these live events. It might be a slightly lesser competition, but he hasn't dropped off at all. And I think people have kind of forgotten that.
Let's talk a little Wyndham Clark. Doesn't have a whole lot of track record of success here at Augusta, but, he is a major winner. He has a decent recent form, finished 5th in Houston a couple of weeks ago. What sort of odds do you like on him maybe making a mark in this tournament this year?
Well, that's the thing that's interesting is his odds are pretty long. And I think people try to poke holes through the Wyndham Clark ball flight, his trajectory. He is a fader of the golf ball, and usually left to right doesn't do that well as Augusta, as much as right to left does. And so there's a little bit working against him there. However, this is like the nicest forecast for Masters golf that we've had in years. We have had like torrential wind and rain in recent years. We've got a really nice 68-degree forecast for pretty much the rest of the weekend. A little bit of wind, not a lot of wind. And so it's going to be a guy that's kind of like bombing his way around this place and hopefully keeping it straight. Wyndham Clark can do that. So I like his chances to contend. Like you said, recent form is pretty solid. He was working through a little bit of a ball change, and he was ball testing and got into a new ball in Houston, and he shot in the mid-60s on the weekend twice in a row. So like, I think he likes where his game is at. And I think kind of like in LA at the US Open, he was a bit of a sleeper going into it when he shouldn't have been. And so he's kind of in that same position again.
Folks, the VSiN Summer Special is here, and it's the best deal of the season. For just $59, get full VSiN Pro access to everything we do from now through August 1st. That's 50% off the regular monthly price. From Augusta to the NFL Draft, MLB action, the NBA and NHL playoffs, and the Kentucky Derby, VSiN Pro has you covered all summer long. Sign up now and you'll get expert picks, including all of our best bets for the Masters, exclusive betting splits from DraftKings and Circa, 24/7 video access on the VSiN Watch app, plus our Kentucky Derby betting guide and the NFL betting guide when it drops this summer, giving you a head start on football season. Every sport, every edge, one price. Get full access now through August 1st for just $59 at vsin.com/subscribe. That's VSIN.com/subscribe. Talking with Sean Zock, he joins us on the Progressive Guest Line, helping us preview the Masters. Sean, we got to talk Jordan Spieth. I think he's always going to be a name to monitor. Doesn't seem to matter how well he's playing. He's 35-1 to win the tournament. He's 5-1 for a top 5, plus 240 for a top 10. What are we looking at this week with Jordan Spieth, who obviously has had plenty of success at this course in the past?
Yeah, it's funny. This golf course has seen like a slumping Jordan arrive in the past, and it's pulled him out of the slump. I think Jordan right now is coming back from a wrist injury, much like me, as we discussed earlier. And he's rounding into form, right? He told himself, I'm going to return at Pebble Beach, and I just want to try to have won or contended in a PGA Tour event before the time I get to Augusta. He's done that in 2 instances. He did not have any wins so far, but he's contended a couple different times. And so he is checking the boxes on this return. Is he going to end up being like a leader at any point in this tournament? No, but he hasn't exactly been a front runner at this tournament in the last like 6 or 7 years. And he has still entertained the crowd with like a 64 on Sunday, a 65 on Sunday. And so if he is within like, let's say 6 shots of the lead, he's someone you could place like a pretty long Sunday futures bet on that actually might pay out.
All right, Sean, we got about 30 seconds here. Give us a semi-long shot or a true long shot or two that you really like this week.
60-1, I think, is kind of where they're sitting at. Corey Connors is playing good golf. He's played good golf here before. Also 60-1, Sergio Garcia. He is on the older side of things, but he's won here before. He's right in that 60-1 range, and people are starting to realize that guy's playing for a Ryder Cup spot. So he is completely locked in on trying to make that team, and a good week this week would help get him there. So we'll look out for Sergio and Corey Connors.
All right, there we have it. Sean Zock joining us on the Progressive Guest Line. Check out all of his great work over at golf.com. Follow him on Twitter at Sean_Zock. We're going to head to break, but when we come back, we'll switch over to the Major League Baseball slate. Jeff Erickson handing out all of his best bets for a loaded Wednesday in baseball. Coming up next on Prop Points.
Watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into Prop Points. Nick Whalen, Jeff Erickson here with you. Closing out the show with a little Major League Baseball talk. Coming up after us, by the way, here on VSiN, Make It Rain with Adam Shine. That starts at 3 p.m. Eastern. He's going to have former pro golfer John McGinnis on to preview the Masters as we lead up to round 1 tomorrow morning. Jeff, we got 4 MLB games in action right now, still 0-0 as we head to the bottom of the 9th in that Cardinals-Pirates game. It was a no-hitter for Eric Fedde. Technically still was for him, but they did pull him after 6 innings, 88 pitches, so understandable. Pirates did get 1 hit on the board. Again, heading to the bottom of the 9th there. Not a lot of runs around these early games so far. Marlins up 2-0 on the New York Mets. We're in the bottom of the 6th. Top 7 in Yankees, Tigers. That one 0-0 as well. 3 hits for the Yankees, 4 for Detroit. Do have an early run on the board in that Rangers-Cubs game. However, we are between innings, about to head to the bottom of the 2nd. Corey Seager with a solo homer for Texas. Still got plenty of games coming our way later today and later tonight, Jeff. So we'll get your best bets for this Major League Baseball slate. San Diego Padres taking on the Oakland Athletics. And before we dive into this game, Jeff, kind of a disaster situation right now, injury-wise, for the Padres.
Yeah, they just lost Jackson Merrill to the IL with a hamstring injury. He was a late scratch on Monday, and it accelerated. They put him on the IL before the game last night. And then in game, they lost both Jake Cronenworth and Fernando Tatis Jr. to injuries. Both are out of the lineup for today's game there. So pretty tough look there for the Padres. And this is a very top-heavy team, too. You know, a lot of stars in fantasy parlance. We call that stars and scrubs a little bit there. And with Cronenworth, it's a rib issue. With Tatis, it's a shoulder issue there. So that's pretty tough for those Padres in terms of building a lineup. You look at who they have in there. Gavin Sheets is your cleanup hitter and your DH. Playing second is Jose Iglesias. Brandon Lockridge is getting a start in center field with them moving Oscar Gonzalez to right field. So they're really trying to, squeeze in there. I mean, you've got a top 3 that's like comprised of regulars in Arias, Bogarts, and Machado. And then after that, it's pretty dicey. And yet we're still looking at like a really high run total in this game. Why? Because all 5 games in Sacramento have gone to the over. Last night, first inning, it already went over. It was 6-3 after 1 inning. Dylan Cease was just an utter disaster start there for the Padres. I'm intrigued to see that the line finally moved on that one. It is 10 is where I'm seeing it now. Opened up at 9.5 last night over at DraftKings, and I saw it move up to 10 on that. So, hey, the book is finally adjusting. On the Athletics side, Tyler Soderstrom back in the lineup. He left last night with a calf issue there, but he is back in there. Something to pay attention to. The Padres are starting Randy Vasquez, who's got a really intriguing home road split. At home last year in Petco Park, he had a 3.24 ERA. On the road, all other ballparks, 6.07 ERA. Now you go from Petco to an extreme, as what it appears at least to be an extreme, in Sacramento at Sutter Health Home Park there. Something to watch there for that. I think it's going to be interesting there. I'm going to not play the over overall, but I'm going to play the A's alt run total of over 5.5 at plus 115 over at DraftKings there. It's at minus money for over 4.5. So I'll go ahead and take the plus money with one more run at over 5.5 on that one.
All right. I like it. Good note on those home road splits for Vasquez and the A's. Favorites on the money line tonight, minus 135. If you do like the Padres, you can get them at plus 114 over at DK. Orioles Diamondbacks. Fun series here. We got Dean Kramer going up against Brandon Pfaadt. Another injury of note in this game. Ketel Marte going to be out multiple weeks with a hamstring injury. I think this one started to look a little bit worse than it initially did, Jeff.
Yeah, exactly. He did go on the IL already earlier in the week, but now they're saying several weeks. You never like seeing that there where it's undefined exactly on the timetable there. Going to require full rest for Marte, and that's a key component of that Diamondbacks offense. So tough break for them early on in the season. We'll see how quickly he can recover. And Marte has dealt with some injuries similar to that in the past. The starting pitching matchup is interesting in this game as well. Brandon Pfaadt versus Dean Kramer. Pfaadt has had a pretty significantly different lefty righty split. Last year, lefties hit over 290 against him. Righties hit over like 207. So pretty big split there. And already in 2 starts this year, he's given up 4 homers to left-handed hitters. You look at that Orioles lineup today, and they've got 6 batters that are either left-handed or switch hitters. So you look at that lineup and you see Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Ryan O'Hearn right off the bat, all can hit lefty. Cedric Mullins batting 5th, Heston Kjerstad hitting 7th, Jackson Holliday hitting 9th. 6 batters they're going to bat left-handed against him there. So I think the odds of Baltimore hitting a homer or two are pretty good with that collection, because most of their best hitters are left-handed. Tyler O'Neill and Ryan Mountcastle being the lone exceptions to this here. So look at that. And, I thought I'd play around with maybe like an individual player here. I just decided to land on Ryan O'Hearn. You could have gone with a couple of different ones. You could go Henderson at shorter odds if you wanted to, but I go Ryan O'Hearn. Total base is over 1.5 at plus 140. And I think I like the Baltimore team total too of over 4.5 runs at minus 105.
All right. Game total sitting at 9 for Orioles Diamondbacks. That is minus 118 to the over. Diamondbacks minus 118 on the money line, playing at home. Cincinnati Reds, Jeff, continue their series against the San Francisco Giants. This is Nick Martinez going up against Justin Verlander. Total in this one is 7.5. Giants minus 142 on the money line. Reds have been firing lately, Jeff. That pitching staff is looking good at the top. Martinez himself, had a perfect outing through 4 innings last time out against the Giants. Verlander, he's been okay so far, not really going deep into games. He's only pitched twice, but makes this kind of a difficult game to evaluate.
It does. It really does. And Verlander was really choppy in his second start against the Mariners, but the Reds, yes, they've won the last 2 games, but their offense isn't cured. They scored 2 runs on Monday night, 1 run last night there. It's just Hunter Green and carrying it 2 nights ago was fantastic. Nick Lodolo last night. Nick Martinez is a good pitcher. He's pitching pretty well early on in that start, kind of, wore down a little bit in the 5th and 6th innings against the Giants, had a little defensive mishaps behind him as well that didn't help. But I think he'll get through 5 at least. And that's the way I'm looking at this. I think both pitchers will be okay early. I don't think either lineup is super scary. I know it's a day game, so it could play a little differently than those night games in San Francisco, but I'm still going to play the first 5 innings, the under 3.5 total runs between the two teams, plus 120. Not going to really weigh in on the side on this one here. But at the same time, you can probably, I think you can probably find a little value on the Giants side if you are looking for that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting game between the Dodgers and the Nats in the mid-afternoon window, Jeff. Nationals have won 4 in a row. They've taken the first 2 games of the series. Dodgers all of a sudden have lost 3 in a row. We get Jake Irvin going up against Landon Knack this afternoon for the Dodgers. I know you're looking at an Irvin prop.
I am. 5 strikeouts through 10 innings so far. Dodgers lineup isn't a heavy strikeout team, especially because they have their solid left-handed hitters in there. So I'm interested in Knack from a fantasy perspective. Last year, 365, 110. Irvin kind of scares me a little bit there. The problem about playing the prop I want to play is the Irvin under 4.5 Ks is the price. It's minus 160. There's not a whole lot of value in that. If you want to play some alt lines as far as that goes, you can get a better price on that. Something to look for there.
It's time for our G-Bank Best Bets of the Night. They are brought to you by G-Bank, the official bank of VSiN. G-Bank is up in the ante with up to a $750 bonus for new G-Bank Visa Signature Card customers. New customers who spend $1,000 on eligible purchases within 90 days from opening their account get a $250 bonus. And additionally, if you spend $50,000 on gaming and sports app loads within the 30 days of opening up that account, you'll receive another $500 bonus. Potentially $750 coming your way in bonus cash. You can apply now at vsin.com/gbank. That's vsin.com/gbank. Subject to credit approval. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Jeff, we got the Masters starting up tomorrow. We got to get our G-Bank best bets in for the tournament. I know you're looking at Robert McIntyre. You talked about him earlier in the show. What are we looking at specifically when it comes to him and any other Masters bets you want to get off your chest?
So if you think that a win bet is too far to go with him, why not a top 10 with Robert McIntyre? Plus 400 money to go top 10. Recent form is great. In his last 5 tournaments, he's made the cut in 4 of them, finishing 6th, 11th, 9th, and 9th, respectively in that. That includes the Players, it includes the API, it includes the Phoenix Open, all really tough tournaments. So let's go plus 400 top 10 on Bobby Mack.
All right. I talked about it earlier. Russell Henley, Top 10, 3-1. We love that. I'll also give you Khalil Ware over 9.5 boards. Didn't get to it earlier in the show. Gone over in 11 of his last 13. Big pace-up spot tonight for the Miami Heat. Big game in general between Miami and Chicago for play-in purposes. So we'll tack on Khalil Ware over 9.5 boards. We'll be back at you tomorrow afternoon here on Prop Points, but Make It Rain with Adam Shine coming up next here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.